We are talking about the 2008 science fiction horror movie Plaguers. This is getting re-released for its 10 years anniversary by Wild Eye Entertainment. And this one is written and directed by Brad Sykes and stars Steve Railsback, who I know primarily from the X-Files TV show. And it's a kind of a throwback movie to the kind of the style of straight-to-video movies that you got in the kind of the 80s. It reminds me of the likes of the Metal Storm, the Destruction of Jared Sin, the prison ship Star Slammer, mixed with kind of elements of Return of the Living Dead and kind of like Evil Dead and stuff like that. So it's kind of like this sci-fi horror kind of mishmash, but the kind of the straight-to-video style movies that you got, not the kind of like the bigger budget. I mean, you could easily say this is kind of like an Aliens kind of style thing, but it isn't. It's kind of like a B-movie, straight-to-video kind of version. So what's the story? Well, we have this crew of this spaceship that is heading back to Earth, and they have acquired through unscrupulous means this alien power source, which they don't really know much about. And they're kind of taking it back to Earth to hopefully sell to the highest bidder and become rich on the way. Then they are hijacked by a group of sexy space pirates, all female crew, and of course these women are all dressed up in little mini dresses with kind of like, you know, silver kind of PVC boots on and stuff like that. So it kind of has this weird element of this kind of old-fashioned kind of 50s kind of feel to it as well, but it mixed in with the kind of more of an 80s kind of style movie. And then they, through to kind of a circumstance, this kind of alien power source ends up breaking and releases this kind of like these fumes that turn both the crew and the pirates, into kind of gooey zombie-like mutants that want to kind of feast on the flesh of the remaining crew and obviously turn them into further mutants, as zombies do. So let's talk about Plaguers. What works first of all with this movie? The one big thing with this movie, and this movie, looking at some of the reviews, they're pretty poor. But I've got to say, I was really impressed with some of the effects here. For a low-budget, straight-to kind of video at this point movie, there is some pretty decent prosthetic makeup effects here. And I've got to say, one thing I really enjoyed is the way these kind of creatures get further kind of mutated as the movie kind of progresses. Their mutation doesn't stop, then they're becoming more grotesque as the film gets on, and you kind of see some quite kind of like gross, kind of bulbous kind of looking mutants that are kind of dribbling with goo and things like that. So I thought the effects work here was pretty done. There's also a couple of kind of decent kills. One that stuck in my mind, there was one of the human kind of crew members attacks this kind of this mutant and kind of slices off a portion of her head, and just kind of see it fall on the floor, and it's pretty, it's done to a kind of a pretty good standard. So I thought for a kind of a low budget indie, the effects work, certainly with the kind of the prosthetics side of stuff, is pretty good. Now, this being obviously a movie kind of made around the 2008 mark, some of the there are a touch of kind of CGI which looks very dated, but there's not that much, to be fair. A little bit of kind of miniature work here and there. But like I said, the most effects, certainly in regards to the creatures themselves, are prosthetic, and I've got to say they are to a good standard. The movie is fairly well paced. It doesn't take long for the action to start happening, and as the movie progresses, the threat becomes progressively worse, and we learn more about the motivations behind certain characters, and maybe some of they are hiding secrets themselves, things like that. So the survivors are dwindling down, and obviously the stakes are raising as the film progresses. So it's relatively well paced. And I've got to say, despite the fact that this being of a very low budget movie, I actually quite enjoyed the attention to detail in regards to the sets and things like that. I just thought for a low budget movie, yeah, we're not looking for massively realism here, but I've got to say, I thought the set design here, I mean, it probably was made from bits of other movies that they see low budget ones tend to do. But nonetheless, I got to say, I thought it was all pretty good. The set design was quite fun, and it looked very authentic to a an 80s style science fiction movie, which I don't know if it was intentional, but having watched it now, it definitely gives you the kind of the nostalgia throwbacks here, and that part of it I kind of quite liked. What doesn't work, okay, so the movie is a little dark. Now, obviously, this is taking place within a kind of a spaceship where there is kind of any disaster going on. So you can argue that's part of the kind of the story, but unfortunately, I just found the movie is a little bit underlit. So the cinematography comes across as a little bit kind of like poor at times. So you can't really see what's going on. I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, if you've seen Aliens versus Predator Requiem, you kind of know what I mean. It could have been a little bit more well lit. The acting, I've got to say, is kind of equivalent to porn acting, if we're being honest. I can imagine that when you're making a movie like this, you're probably not taking it seriously, to be honest with you, and you probably feel a little bit dumb while you're making it. But nonetheless, there are examples where this is done to a good standard, but this isn't one of them. And the acting here is obviously kind of, like I've said, porn-level acting for the most part. Even Steve Railsback, who, you know, has got a fairly large filmography, doesn't do a fantastic job here, I've got to be honest. Again, I like the kind of the set design, but like I said, I don't know if it needed to have this kind of like this 50s aesthetic where we have these little mini dresses kind of being run around. It just, I don't know, it seems a little bit out of touch, even for the kind of 2008, to be honest with you. I get that it's kind of supposed to be like this kind of like kind of weird, kind of catch, kind of throwback movie, but I don't know, it just seems a little bit kind of silly. Adds a little bit to the silly factor, but not in a good way to me. I would have, you know, it just adds a little bit of cheese to it. A bit more cheese than it needed. And I'm going to say although I like some of the practical effects, some of the kind of the small amount of kind of CGI we see is pretty, you know, pretty hammy at times. As is the dialogue. The dialogue is extremely hammy, and yeah, we got to be honest, this movie isn't striving for kind of realism, and there's plenty of kind of like dumb plot points in here that just don't really kind of like make much sense, and kind of like the whole setup with the kind of like the pirates and stuff is quite frankly ridiculous. So overall, should you see this movie? I feel this movie, if you look at IMDb, it's got like a 2.8 mark out of it, which I think is a little low, to be honest, because I do feel this movie, although yeah, you cannot say it is a, you know, artistically a good movie, there is an element of fun. I do really enjoy the kind of the effects work here, and the movie does, you know, it's not a boring film. This movie does entertain on a kind of a cheesy kind of fun level. Yeah, you can analyse it and you can kind of pick it apart for kind of its technical kind of side, its acting, you know, it's kind of like weak dialogue and scripts. I get it, but nonetheless, you can enjoy it as a kind of a B-movie, schlocky, weird movie that's just got lots of kind of gooey monsters that look pretty cool. And if you're a fan of like the kind of like the Return of the Living Dead, don't get me wrong, it's by no means as good as Return of the Living Dead. But you can see the kind of the influence. It has that kind of like that kind of like guerrilla kind of Evil Dead kind of style filmmaking vibe to it. And for that, I do think it does have some enjoyment levels here. So I'm actually going to give this a 5 out of 10, which might not seem like a massively high mark, but compared to all the reviews I've been reading, that's a big jump up. But no, it's not a great movie. It's not going to appeal to anyone who wants any type of kind of like sensible or, you know, or character driven. There's no characterization in this movie whatsoever. You know, it's just a kind of a fun B-movie schlocky ride that has some cool monsters in it, and so that's really kind of the best kind of like recommendation I can give from it. If you want any type of depth, look elsewhere. But for some schlock, if you like your kind of zombie movies, zombies in space, you may want to check it out. 5 out of 10. Have you seen Plagueis? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.